Alright, boys and girls, we are in the top 2 for my best of games of 2021 list. For anyone who's been a frequent watcher of the streams, I'm sure all of you have watched every stream at least 3 times, right, by now? Then you can probably have a 50-50 guess as to what is going to be my number 1 game. But without further ado, it's time to talk about why this next game is going to be number 2. And that is Gunfire Reborn. Over the past decade, I've gotten really good at kind of measuring the worth or the greatness of a game very relatively early on in its early access days. We enjoyed Dead Cells, Slay the Spire, the first time we played Monster Train, and so on. And Gunfire Reborn fits in this category. I remember when we played like the very first version of it. I think this was like a week or two right out of its early access. And the game was looking really damn impressive already. And Gunfire Reborn is just a really great example of how you can apply roguelike elements and procedural and random generation just right to give a game a lot more replayability than it would have gotten otherwise, and even more so compared to a game that would just fully randomly procedurally generate every single aspect of it. Now, the beauty about Gunfire Reborn's design is that it avoids the trap that I think Remnant from the Ashes and Borderlands falls into when it comes to trying to present this kind of randomized take on role-playing shooting. With Remnant, the issue the game ran into is that everything that the player does is basically fixed. You have fixed guns, fixed mods, and anything that gets thrown at you in terms of the procedural generation of the levels doesn't really change. It doesn't matter what enemy you throw at me if I'm using the same shotgun or the same assault rifle and so on. So the procedural generation kind of gets lost because you're not necessarily adapting room to room, biome to biome. Now, they did try to introduce a little bit of that with its actual true roguelike mode that came with the final expansion, but again, it still falls into that case of fixed choices defining gameplay. Borderlands goes the opposite. We're just going to give you randomized guns of everything. Every gun has randomized stats and modifiers, and we're just going to throw, a giant boat's worth of guns at you over the course of playing this game. But the problem is that the guns themselves really lack that sense of personality. You either get dozens and dozens of guns that all are just very minute differences. Maybe this gun shoots 0.67% a little bit faster. Maybe this gun is 2% more accurate. And that's it. Or you have the, legendary rare guns that are actual, game-changing. Okay, this gun, the bullets shoot and they bounce along the ground. This gun explodes when you throw it at people. And you get that level of variety, but it's few and far between. What Gunfire does is kind of presents the best of both worlds. You have guns that are fixed. A scalpel is a scalpel. The illusion is going to be the same illusion in terms of its utility, run after run, play after play. But by changing and adding these very majorly affecting modifiers to these guns, they start to get more personality to them. The scalpel, for instance, is a very hard gun to use when you activate the kind of shoots 2 bullets at the same time mod. But if you get the modifier that, let's say, returns bullets if you miss, suddenly you have a gun that you can just hold down left mouse button and you're going to be killing things with it. When a gun gets an elemental effect on it, that's a huge change. The exclusive inscriptions or / modifiers. These are all ways that the player doesn't know what they're going to get on a run-by-run basis. But the fixed elements of the gun still define their strategy. If I want to be a sniper, I have these sniper options. If I want to use shotguns, I have these shotgun options. But then what happens on the individual layer of these guns is different. That is also compounded again by the kind of controlled number generation or player control generation. We still need to come with a very catchy name for this, where the player dictates what is my reward that I'm going to get for my character at the end of each stage. And this again is how you define your strategy and your build. And much like examples such as Hades, Slay the Spire, Binding of Isaac, your run from room to room is going to dramatically change, or should dramatically change, while you're still trying to kind of play with whatever the build is that you want to achieve. If I want to, let's say, use shotguns, well, I should look for modifiers or class perks, excuse me, that give me more damage at close range, or allow me to defend better. And the same goes for the occult scrolls. So you have essentially working with the player, the guns, the scrolls, as well as your golden goblets that you get. And lo and behold, you're going to have a run, or you're going to have a strategy or a build for that play. And the game, similar to the Binding of Isaac, has an unlocking system of the more you do, the more enemies you kill, more challenges you achieve, we're going to give you more stuff. And that more stuff will then be fed into the procedural generation on subsequent runs. And all this adds up to a very smartly designed game that I don't think a lot of people, even the developers themselves, realized what they had at the start. It is very much akin to Dyson Sphere program, and how that game just blew up for developers following their Kickstarter success. Now, as of this time, Gunfire Reborn is at 1.0. It is out. I have a written interview I sent to the developers that will be going up in early 2022. And they are kind of in this position of, where do we go from here? The game was priced incredibly fair throughout early access, and I am sure that for every one of you who has played Gunfire Reborn either with me or on your own, that you would probably buy a sequel from these developers, no questions asked. And it is very rare to see a developer almost just like perfectly strike gold, on their first major idea like this. And I really do wish the best of luck to the developers on whatever they have next and whether or not they continue to support Gunfire. But again, this is just a great example of how to integrate roguelike elements into another design without the game feeling that you're kind of playing, for future runs. As we've talked about with games that go too heavy into the persistent elements. You can enjoy Gunfire on your first run as much as your 50th or 100th. Now, what keeps it from number 1? That is a tough point. I do wish that there was a little bit more variety in kind of the flow of the game. And what I mean by that is introducing a few new bosses, a few new elements to mix things up. Again, this is coming from somebody who has spent a lot of time in this game, who's gone to the reincarnation levels. So keep that in the back of your mind, or take that with a grain of salt. And my number 1 game is really going to be more about just a game that just kind of defies the logic of what it did. And again, in the top 3, top 5 for me, it's really not a case of one game being better or worse than the other. It's just, again, different qualities of amazing. So, with that said, tomorrow is going to be number 1. Can anyone actually guess at this point what game is going to take it? Let me know in the comments down below, and let me know what your favorite games are as well. Be sure to do all the liking and subscribing, check out our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions and that number 1 pick tomorrow here on Game Wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games.